So, who am I? Why are you here listening to me? I've been an operations engineer for a huge chunk of my life. I've worked at a couple of big websites you've heard of, like Google, Craigslist, Wikipedia. But now, I'm at Cumulus Networks with the adorable Rocket Turtle logo. Cumulus is a Linux-based network operating distribution. It's based on Debian. And since I work at Cumulus, I am going to be using this for most of my examples. Who are you? Hopefully, you are either a network engineer who's automation curious, but you're still running in the traditional or legacy model. Or you're a systems engineer and you love your network engineers and you want to help them to get started automating. If you're already automating everything, woohoo! Congrats, you're done. You can just pull out your laptop and just hang out for the rest of the time. So I'm going to take you today on the first steps of taking your infrastructure from legacy to the proper new DevOps model. But what do I mean when I say DevOps, right? Think if I ask 100 people, I'll get 100 different answers. But really, at the core, for a really long time, developers and sysadmins weren't communicating. And this caused a lot of friction in between teams. DevOps was the idea when these teams work together, your production is in a way better state. But I think even more importantly is that infrastructure is code. Infrastructure needs to be thought of and described by code. And there are some really great tools out here, like Puppet, and so your infrastructure can be completely managed by code and no more logging in. So today, we're in a way better place. We have the dog, the developers, working with the pony, ops, to lead the kitties, which is everyone else. So it's great, DevOps is leading the pack. But the network kittens are just being pulled along behind because the network methodology has been so old-fashioned. Traditional networking, the way you do things, you often log in manually with a password, not even an SSH key. You're typing in your commands. You cut and paste over console. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have built a network from scratch before. How many of you have been cutting and pasting over a console and then you realize nothing works because your console buffer filled up? Hands? Sure, yeah. See a couple of you, yeah. It's always the biggest pain, and it always seems to happen to me. Some vendors have rollback, but others don't. So let's say you made some change that broke everything. You might not remember what exactly it was. How are you going to get back to your working state? And Rancid, I can't give Rancid too much flack. It was a great tool at the time. But it's still really the only good tool to save your configuration and your state. And typos can bring down your entire network. And come on, who's had a typo bring down their network? I think there's some more people who just aren't admitting it here. So why is this still the case? Why are we still in this old-fashioned world? Well, when we're in the automation world, I think we forget that our tools have been around for a while. So let's have a little fun. A lot of people think of CF Engine as really one of the first configuration management tools. It was pretty great. So does anyone here know when it was written? Laptops down, no Wikipedia? Anyone? Don't see any hands? It was actually written in 1993, right? We've had this for a long time. I don't think we really realize this. But let's compare this to Cisco's 1PK to help enable network automation. That was only released in early 2014. So DevOps has a good 20 years over the networking industry. So the tools to do this are still new. So without the help of these tools and without the help of vendors to help us interact with the tools, it's no wonder that we've been stuck behind. But that's OK, because automation is for everyone. And today, I'm about to show you right now how to get to the promised land of network and ops working together happily. Because when your network and your systems teams work together, we're all better off. So first, let me dispel a few common myths that I've heard. Right? It's a fad. Well, come on, we're all here at PuppetConf. I think it's not a fad anymore. It's hard. Yeah, this is hard. It's a new hard skill. But we all learned how to deal with BGP and terabytes of data flowing by. We can do hard things. We're smart people. This will steal my job. That's another fear I hear a lot. But the truth is that never really happens. Like, very rarely does your department budget actually go down. Instead, a lot of times you get to learn all of these new awesome skills, and then you can convince your boss, hey, maybe we can do this other project that you've had on the back burner for a while. One wrong move will take everything down. That is very true. That also happens without automation. My gear doesn't support it. Another thing, a lot of gear still doesn't, but that's okay because I'm going to show you how you can get 3/4 of the way there without having to have your gear support anything. And I don't know where to start. That's what a lot of these also boil down to. But now you do, because you're here today. I think it is time to trust the computers. The internet, it's built on trust. BGP peering is 100% trusting that this other network engineer on this other network is going to send you the right routes. If anyone didn't know that, it's actually pretty scary. The internet stays up just due to trust. So where do you start? There's a lot of choices. Look at all of these choices, right? There's so many vendor logos up here. So you have so many choices, you don't have to be a programmer. You can cheat, and you can use all of these cool tools and all this cool code that other people have written. Your problem is really social, and it's not technical. But I believe in you. So we're going to start learning now. As I told you before, I work for Cumulus Networks, but I know a lot of you aren't using us yet. But good news, you don't have to cry. Most major vendors support Puppet. And like I said before, even if your gear doesn't, I'm going to show you how to get 3/4 of the way there. I love that cat. All right, step 1, Git. Git is going to be your best friend. It's a source code, but you really can just think of it as a text file repository, right? It's got automatic file change management. It's really built for teams to be able to work on the same files. It's really easy to get started, yet there's still a lot of knobs for all of you advanced users out there. GitHub is going to be your best friend. It's easy to start using, and it's really cheap if you don't know how to run your own repository or you really have better things to do with your life. They even have private repositories, so you don't have to have all of your private network configurations out there in public. So here's a couple terms that you'll hear and see all over the place. Remote repository. This is the central server that hosts the files. It's GitHub, basically. Local repository. You'll copy over the copy of the repository to your own laptop. Just think it's, the local repository is your laptop. Branch. So when you want to make a change, you sort of branch, it makes a copy. And so then you can make all of these new changes before these things get pushed into production. And merge is applying these changes back to the master copy. So it's also, you'll hear the term pull request a lot. The pull request is the request to merge. So step 2, check in your configurations. You can't start automating until you know what you have. And trust me, you'll find there's some switch that you've abandoned, and it's really scary because remember that person that you fired and they stomped off really angrily? Turns out they had access to the switch, and you're amazed your network hasn't gone down, or you forgot to apply the firewall to that switch. That's okay. Check it in. Now you know. So, in action, check this out. Whoa! It's been checked in. You can see all the changes that have happened since the last time. It's I don't know. I love GitHub. They just make such a beautiful product. It's so easy. So step 3 is to templatize your configuration files. You don't even have to have your configuration files push out automatically. You can have configuration management and just cut and paste your configuration files. So it'll work for all the legacy gear. So I wanted to show you a nice example. So if you look here, I have a template example. My site.pp for my network.server. I defined a type of switch config so that the network server can have a bunch of files named for the switch configs. See here, I've got two kinds of servers, web servers and storage servers, defining interfaces and VLANs. If you look on the right-hand side, you see where I define the type. So this will just put, for every time you call that type, it will make a configuration file, put it in the directory home switch configs. Here's my template example. It's pretty simple. I just, go over all of the interfaces, put them in the VLANs, done, right? Give it a loop back. So like I said, very simple. This is where you can start, right here. Just take a couple of these variables. I tried to keep this one nice and short so I didn't have to have you scroll through 50 slides. And ta-da! Here's a configuration file with Puppet. It's great. Now I've got my switch configuration file. And bam, my configuration is code. Ta-da! Great news, right? We're all happy? Everyone done here? 10 minutes? Pretty good. Mostly great news. Bad news, we're still in silos. All right, raise your hand if your network and your systems teams are together. Are you all nice, one big happy family? Do I see anyone? 1, 2, yes. Awesome, good job, you two. Now raise, 3, 4, okay, more people are raising their hands. All right, now raise them if your teams are apart. It's a lot more of the apart teams. That's pretty normal. Teams often have ticket walls, right? You're throwing your tickets over those cute little box walls to the other kittens. A great example is machine turnups, right? Like, you get this new rack of machines. You're going back and forth between the network and the systems team, right? You're like, oh, network team, I need this and this VLAN. Oh, systems team, I have so many better things to do than just turn up a freaking VLAN. I mean, seriously, do you see my 1,000 ticket list, right? So instead of feeling like you're working together for the same company, for the same goal, you have this resentment that builds up. You feel like one side is holding you back, the other side is just filling up your day with junk, and no one's happy. This is where Git branches and pull requests can come to the rescue. It's great, right? You make your change in a branch, and you merge and review and you can merge and review the change. If you look through GitHub, it makes branching and pull requests really easy. Like right here, I push a new branch called new VLAN, right? And all I have to do is click that nice little button that says compare and pull request. Click that, I opened up a new pull request, adding web server 1 to VLAN 50. All right, and there is the GitHub view of my pull request, right? So I could merge it, or I could have one of my teammates code review, which is excellent. And that someone clicked merge, and all done. Everyone's happy. The best part, though, about GitHub and Git in general is that you also can restrict who gets to approve your changes. So you get to have your cake of your together teams, and you get to eat it too, because you still get all the security you have from your silos. You've removed the ticket wall by allowing the systems person to send you the pull request, but you haven't given up the security of making sure that somebody else is still double checking and approving the new configuration. Now we're working together. Of course, there's a lot more tools that you can use. I could make a whole talk on just of these, but since we all want to get out of here on time, I'm just going to mention 2 more things that I think will make the biggest impact on your day. Continuous integration. Continuous integration systems are great. It allows you to run checks on your code every time you check your code in. Travis CI is a really great free online option for those of us who don't like paying for anything. Or Jenkins is another really great open source project. You just have to do the work of hosting it yourself. And actually, in a lot of workplaces, you already have one of these set up. You just might have to ask some of your coworkers on one of the other sides of those ticket walls how you can plug in your repositories to their continuous integration servers. And like, for example, I'm incapable of typing some words correctly. I just cannot do that. So I actually have a list of words that I commonly misspell. If Jenkins finds any of these words, it doesn't let me check in the code, which has helped me so much. Right? And then if you want to go a little more advanced, you can write some more tests around your configuration. And virtualization. Virtualize all your things. Pretty much every vendor has their own virtualized platform, usually even for free. There's this great open source project called GNS3. It allows you to virtualize pretty much any vendor switch. So now, every next time you want to make a change, you can try it out on your new virtual network to make sure that it works. You don't have to trust that the firewall change that you're making is going to be correct. And you want to try a new BGP traffic shaping scheme, you can make sure that works too. You can test it and tweak it before your 2 a.m. maintenance window because you're not going to be very awake. It's 2 a.m. Biggest problem I usually find after converting everything to a virtualized test network is after you get hooked, you're going to wonder how you ever worked without it. And then the very last advanced bit is to take the leap of faith and install the Puppet client on your switches and routers if your equipment supports it. If not, you should write up your networking salespeople and bug them until they do. So now you're all thinking, great, this is so cool. Sounds like the best idea. What happens when something goes wrong, right? Oops, nothing went wrong with this kitty. This kitty is very happy because this kitty's network is virtualized. So now something went wrong. Remember this file from before? This site PP I showed you before? This time, someone made a typo, /3 instead of /32. It's a little anecdote. I can tell you 3 different places I know where this exact typo, a /3 instead of a /32, has happened, taking down so much traffic. Now, I know you're all using peer review now with your new GitHub workflow, right? Right? But maybe your reviewer didn't have their coffee in the morning. You push out the config. It's so great. Ew. Yeah. Website's down. Your puppy and your pager are on fire. Your pager's ringing. You don't have time to go rummaging through all the changes to find out which specific change went wrong. But that's where Git rollback comes to the rescue. Since Git keeps track of every incremental change, a Git revert allows you to undo the previous change. This way you can quickly get back in a safe state. So if you look right here, if you're certain there's been no changes since your last merge, this command will revert the change. Just allows us to revert the last commit, head -0, and keeps the master branch as the parent. There you go, yay. Now, when you make a commit, it is only reflected on the local branch. So you need to make sure that you push this back to the remote branch so the fix is actually propagated and you fix your network. There you go. Whew, all better. Now we have some breathing room. Of course, this brings up what I think is my favorite part of DevOps, the post-mortem. Some people are like, really, what, really? But without a post-mortem to tell you what went wrong, you're just clicking your heels and wishing it doesn't happen again. So post-mortems are by far the best part of DevOps culture. It's about finding ways to improve your process to make sure the technical mistakes don't happen again, and it's not about assigning blame to people, right? Blameless, I think, is the most important part. You have to be completely technically accurate. Maybe you were doing a drunk handstand at 3 a.m. and you bumped into a rack in the data center. You have to own up to it. Of course, the last part is my favorite, how to fix it. How do we enact institutional change to prevent this from happening again? For example, we could install breathalyzers on the door to the data center so you can't wander in at 3 a.m. drunk, right? Or probably a little more practically, we can just write a test to check the configuration to make sure that loopback IPs are only /32s and not /3s. But the most important thing is to remember, we're all human. We all fail sometimes. We want everyone to feel comfortable admitting when they mess up. So now, we've gotten rid of a lot of drudge work. We've gotten to move from this, it gets even better. Yeah. to this. Yay! So, just a reminder about what I've just told you right now. Step 1, open up a Git repository, start checking in your configurations. Then, transform your configurations into code with templates. Break down all of your silos and the evil ticket wall by encouraging your coworkers to help you with pull requests. And then I showed you your extra credit. You can use continuous integration tools and virtualization to help you test your configurations before they deploy. And you can use a Puppet agent to pull changes automatically. And now you're onto the journey of the promised land of teamwork and NetDevOps. Questions? Anyone? Oh, microphone? Oh, over here.
I guess it's fairly obvious, but once you've templatized and codified your configurations and make your changes, for the systems that don't support automatically changing through API or whatever, then you're just manually copying them up.
Then you still have to do a manual copy paste.
Okay.
It's not
it's
ideal.
That 3/4 there.
Exactly, and it's so much better than nothing.
Right. Great.
And honestly, my favorite part is then you also get peer review, because otherwise your peer review is, your coworker sort of looking over your shoulder, like, is that what you typed, right? And it doesn't work very well. Maybe your coworker's out at lunch, and you're like, oh, forget it, I'll just do this. And with that system, you get the awesomeness of peer review. And with templatizing, I find it reduces a lot of typos, especially because in so many networks, like 50%, 75% of your configs are all the same pieces. Anyone else? Oh, right over there. Sorry, it's a little hard to see with all the bright lights.
That's okay. I work in a big healthcare enterprise, or typically like behind on everything in our big IT shop. So how do you have you had success outside of companies like Google, Twitter, et cetera, changing the culture, and how have you seen that happen?
That is a great question. There's been more or less success at some of the companies like Google, Twitter, with changing the culture. It's really hard. I find the first step is really starting the step-by-step, right? You check in and you templatize, and all of a sudden, like I started at Wikimedia, I wrote some Puppet code just to create firewalls for me automatically, firewall configuration pieces, because it was a pain. Every time we got a new web server, we had to update it, and it was hard for me to keep track. So sometimes if you just do that and show by example, right? You're like, hey, look, we want to bring up this new switch? Hey, look at this nice little template I have. All we have to do is put in the name and some information, and it's there. Then your coworkers often will be like, oh, this is great. Now I can go have a beer early instead of, typing all this in manually. So I find that tends to help a lot, like sort of leading by example. And you're always welcome to tweet at me or email at me if you have any more specific questions, because I love to help people change their workplace. It's one of the more exciting things for me. Anyone else? Oh.
I'm going to lead with saying I know nothing about network hardware and stuff, but does newer network hardware come with support to install Git? I know a lot of Cisco switches come with Puppet support already, but what about Git?
Git on the switch itself is much less common.
Okay.
If you could then use Git instead of having to copy and paste configurations. You could use Git to just Git pull configurations. Little blurb: you can do that on Cumulus, but it's the rate of hardware change is usually fairly low at companies. So as much as I wish that everyone would, update all of your switches and routers to the newest thing that can all run Puppet, we all have budgets, and we might have to still support that 10-year-old switch that's in the closet. All right, well, that looks like it's everything. Thank you very much for coming. I will be outside to discuss NetDevOps more and any questions you might have.